Welcome back to the This Week in Fantasy series. I'm your host, Venomous Stare. Today we have an exceptionally exciting guest, a return guest, but not from this season. It's the banter-filled and talented Jaxon. How are you, buddy?
What's up? How you doing?
I'm
Doing all right. Fantasy team not doing all right though. How
well.
about how about that?
I'm excited to have you back on. It's nice that you waited until you were tied with Spencer to make your first appearance. So made it
Yeah.
made it out of dead last. Now you're just tied for last. But I want to hit you with a few quick questions before we actually start the review segment. Who do you think is going to make it to the fantasy Super Bowl in this league?
It's a tough decision. I mean, it's tough because I don't know who's because of how this league's playoffs are set up, where only four teams make it, and the division winners of each division get in. Not it's not the best record, which I think it's this is a good year to kind of maybe talk about that next year about maybe uh better best records go, or maybe a couple more teams get in. But because I mean, look at the Cursed Lands division, how the best records in the league are all from that division, the best teams in the league, and they've battled it out all year. So I mean, it just sucks to think that two of those teams most likely will not be getting in, and we don't even know. Weston honestly still has a chance, only 2 games back. So I don't. It's kind of like I don't even know who's going to be in the playoffs at this point. But I mean, I feel like your team's been really good all year, been really solid. Um, I think Christian's team is on a hot streak right now, and uh, I think that win against Weston was really good last week. So I think he probably will get in. Y'all are up a game, but got to finish here at the end. I really don't, and I just all the other teams in the other divisions really aren't that good. What's crazy is like how the way Cameron started. I really thought he was going to try to actually finish,
Hmm.
and obviously he's got that L and a 4 by him, so it's like it seems like he hasn't really been doing his team lately.
The typical
So
KAMLAPSE. It never
I
fails.
was I was thinking about it earlier today. I was like, I want to know what world it would be like to live like Cameron, where it's like me. It's like Tuesday morning. I'm trying to add every waiver wire I can to destroy the y'all getting good players and stuff like that. And
I love it.
Cameron's that guy that's like maybe Thursday he looked at some guys and got the last picks off the waiver wire from the week before. You know what I
The
mean? It's like,
drippings,
and
the leftovers.
I just want to know what kind of world that's like to live in. Just to like, he probably could win the Super Bowl and not care.
Or
And
not
like,
even know. His dad
yeah,
would
not
probably
you
be
know.
like, "Oh, you want the all the cash or keep the buy-in for next year?" It's like, what are you talking about? I think that's a great point, and I think it must be nice to, Cameron must be so goddamn happy all the time. Like, I just imagine him going around life with a big banana grin, just sort of vacuously, not even worried about
Mhm.
anything. But the cam lapse happened again. It was something that I sort of spoke about, and I don't want to say like predicted because that sounds like so ostentatious, like it's been happening for the last decade. Like, give me a break, predicted, but you sort of knew this was going to happen on some level, but I completely agree with you. It really did look like it was going to be Cam's year. You had Ben in a bad way. You had No Fried below average. Aaron looked horrible at the beginning. And now, 5 weeks later, when Cameron looked like he had a very hard to blow lead a couple games, he's fucking there at the bottom with the rest. So, pretty disappointing. All right, my other question before we jump into the reviews is you pretty much predicted the me and Cgauch to make it in, but who are the other two teams that you think are going to limp into the playoffs?
Well, I will say that because the playoffs are and that he will be the wild card regardless. Y'all will actually probably play in the first round.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, that's gonna
actually.
suck.
Actually, like, it's going to be one of these teams that limped into the playoffs that what if a couple of their players have a good week and they still won from a team that just like you just had a battle with this in
See,
your wild card week per
yeah,
se, or the semifinal week. But what's crazy is obviously I'm I'm like, yeah, you look at me and you're like, yeah, he's out. You look at Spencer, he's out. But I mean, I honestly like, I mean, obviously, I love fantasy football. My other fantasy football league's going a little bit better for me, so it's a little bit funner. But I honestly, mathematically, still have a chance to make the playoffs. Like, if I'm able to win out, if Clap for Bacon wins this week, I beat Clap for Bacon next week, then everybody else loses the last week of the season. I win. I could potentially be tied at 6-8. I'm not even gonna say, but I'm not saying I'm gonna make it. I honestly think that uh, AB's team is probably going to be the team to make it out of our division. I just think Clap for Bacon is just his team. His team, because losing McCaffrey has just been killer for him. But I mean, you just look at him as 938 points. He's gotten lucky, and a lot of points hadn't been scored on him either. So I don't know. I think maybe AB is probably the best. I think for our division to have the best chance, I think AB's team kind of has to be the one to make it. Which it's crazy. He only drafted one running back and has it's been where he's at. And at the bottom, I mean, it really depends on these last couple of weeks. Like, is Aaron gonna? I think Aaron kind of is trying the hardest right now, and might have the best team. Just adding through the waiver wire throughout the year. Obviously Cameron doesn't really care, so he's done. I don't really. I mean, No Fry doesn't have a bad team, but unless Mahomes is going to go off the last couple of weeks, that's the only way he can really have a shot. His running backs aren't that great right now, and then Ben's won 2 in a row and he's in first right now. So I mean, I think it'll probably be Ben or Aaron that make it.
I agree.
I don't know. I think I'll say Ben and AB are probably the two guys that'll make it out of the other side.
I think you're dead on with your predictions as usual. And narrative-wise, I think it's very compelling matchups. You have Christian and I, two heated division rivals, probably the two best teams in the league right now, even though my team the last couple of weeks has been a little underwhelming. If you just look over the course of the year, we've both been very strong. And I think that what you were saying about the fact that Cgauch and I are probably going to have to face each other in round one, seed 1 versus 4, that's a pretty compelling case for a restructuring, I feel like you laid out there. So we can move on to the last
Well,
week reviews.
I feel like just the fact that like if Lilly, like or whoever gets third in that division, if they have a better record than one of those other teams that made the playoffs in that other division, like that's I don't know. I feel like they should have a opportunity. You know what I mean? To like, I mean, it's this league's like college football. It's like it's all about what you do during the season.
True.
You have to be really good in the season. There's no like, oh, this is a 10-man league and we're letting 8 teams in the playoffs. Like you basically already in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's kind of like baseball in the 50s where they played all season and it was just like straight into the pennant. There was no like ALDS, NLDS back then.
Yeah.
So we can start with my narrow and crushing loss to Lilly, which in fact lost me the division lead and made me tie Christian. So this was a major loss. Keenan Allen popped off, but if you remember, going into Monday night, I was down by 6. And I had Ronald Jones and the Tampa kicker left. And Ronald Jones, even though he got looks, was fucking horrific. And just shit in my mouth and basically lost me the game.
I love, but I hate how the weeks are structured. Where like there's a Thursday night game, and you kind of get to see who gets off to a lead, or and then it's like, okay, who's playing at 12, who's playing at 3, what kind of stack do you kind of have, and then Sunday night game. I always want to have a guy in the Sunday night game because I always feel like if they're a prime time player, they have a good game. Monday is so hit or miss. Monday it's either this guy killed me or this make or break. It like Mondays really make me upset. Because a lot of times it's after Sunday, you're kind of sitting there, kind of like thinking about where you're at, and you're like, I got a good chance to win. You're feeling pretty good, and then your guys come out and just shit the bed. It just I
I
don't know. It
I agree
sucks.
wholehearted. And to go off of what you were saying, there are situations where, let's just say all your guys go on Sunday, and if half of them go at noon, they're sort of scoring all at once. You're keeping up with multiple games. But if you have one guy versus one guy, and they're both occurring on Monday night, one for each team, similar to this game, you can kind of puzzle out almost like it's a very simple math problem. I need like more than 5 points out of X player to win. And when stuff like this happens, when Ronald Jones gets 2.4, even though he gets a lot of touches, you're sort of, well, like double digits, you sort of sit there and say to yourself, this is way more frustrating because I'm focused on this one specific outcome, as opposed to if you just had a bad game at noon, you wouldn't really be so focused on it. So I really know
Yeah,
what you mean.
yeah.
And
And like, what about when you are, I've had just opportunity like a situation this year. I was up like 82 to 50 something or 40 something, and the person there was two games on Monday night, and like they had like four people left, and like they all did exactly what they needed to do, and I ended up losing by like 20. And I went into the day thinking, I don't think I mean, I'm scared because I know how the past has treated me, but that I think, as bad as his team's played this week, I think I got this, and then boom, you get it. Like Mondays are never good for me, and anytime I start a player, like, Thanksgiving Day was a little bit different, but and it's always a different day because the Lions always play, and then they
ugh,
always either get a lot of points scored on them or they score a lot of points. But the most Thursdays have that one game, and like nobody really does nothing. Like it's a rock fest.
yeah.
There's been a couple of games this year where there's been a player that does something, obviously, but for the most part, like guys just do not perform on Thursday nights. I don't know what it is.
I think in general, even to watch the Thursday night game is usually pretty underwhelming as a rule too.
Yeah. Even if it's like two good teams, it's like it's just kind of, I don't know.
I think the less preparation they have and less rest really shows.
Yeah, true.
The other exciting elements of this game, I think, are that Jefferson, the rookie receiver for Minnesota, caught a touchdown. I think it's Justin Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a guy I think that going into the future is going to be like a fourth or fifth round level pick, especially if Thielen leaves and he becomes the number one. Do you believe in this guy, Jefferson? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, not in this league, but another league. I drafted him and let him go after like week two or three, and kind of have just watched him kind of like blossom throughout the year. I mean, he was a really good player in college, and he's been awesome. After those first couple of weeks. Um, so yeah, I mean, I do think though that if Thielen was to leave, I don't think he would be as effective, or they'd have to get some other receivers out there.
Sort of a
Um,
juju effect, as it were.
I
Or
mean,
AB effect, I
I
guess it would be.
yeah, I don't. I feel like that's an easy kind of like thing to say with every wide receiver that the number one guy kind of leaves. But I mean, at the same time, like Kirk Cousins, if you watch him, he has a great chemistry with Thielen. So I think if Thielen left, it would really it would really kind of tear that whole kind of. But I don't think, I mean, I don't know if that's been something that's been said or anything like that. But I don't think Thielen uh, needs to really go anywhere. I think he's a key piece of that, offense. So, but I do think Justin Jefferson is going to be one of the better players, and I think he's a guy that I mean, you said fourth or fifth. I mean, he could almost. I mean, I think that's a good probability that someone could probably take him that high next year.
Yeah.
He's probably going to have a good year.
Well, I don't think that Minnesota is as bad as their record shows. I think Minnesota has sort of run into some tough luck, and their defense is way, way worse than it's been in previous seasons. Significantly
Yeah.
worse.
I mean, it was really, really bad the first 3, 4 weeks of the season. And I will say I feel like it's gotten like a little bit better, but
Agreed.
obviously the Cowboy, losing to the Cowboys is not, you know,
Well, they made them look good too. It's not just they like
yeah,
lost. They made the Dallas fucking Cowboys look good, and this is another key factor in me losing. I pick up the Vikings against Dallas's offense, and the one game all season without Dak where the Cowboys even look okay, they do it against the
yeah,
Vikings defense, and that's essentially like a wasted start, 2 points. And what do you know? The very next week, the Cowboys play a team with a losing record and are again horrifically embarrassing. So what was that? Just a freaking 1 week aberration? That's very frustrating.
yeah, it is.
All right, so we can move on from this brutal loss for me. If I end up like getting wild
Well,
card,
the other thing that you got to say about it too, though, is like, just beat me by fucking 20 points because like I'm not trying to deal with, you know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
sucks that it's just like dangling in front of my face like this, you know? That's what I hate about it.
Agreed. It did make it much more tough to lose in the way that I did going into Monday. It's like Ronald Jones, they're playing LA, like he's, it's just so disgusting. Between
Yeah, you're like going around to work. You're like, hey, what do you think? You think Ronald Jones is going to get me fucking 3 points tonight or whatever the fuck you needed, you know? And it's
yeah,
like, oh, yeah, for sure, dude. He's projected like 13. Oh, no, why you're tripping. And it's
exactly.
like, well, that's why I'm fucking tripping because I fucking
Exactly.
lost
Talk to him.
Tuesday when I'm pissed off, you
Well,
know?
and let me tell you about Zeke breaking 100 yards for the first time all season and finding the end zone, and it finally looking like he was going to have value. That gets wasted. The next week, this upcoming week we're previewing, he literally gets less than two. So this is like the
Yeah.
worst of all worlds. It's sort of illogical to look at it this way, but like I feel like this at least. I like wasted Zeke's pop off week. You know what I mean? The one good week he's gonna
Yeah.
have all year. I pissed it away. So brutal, brutal loss for
What
me.
yeah, I mean I don't really know what I think about your what I think what your name means, but what does your name exactly mean? Johnny Rocker was right about New York.
So I'd love to explain this. So John Rocker was the Atlanta Braves' late inning setup man in the late 90s. This was at the height of the steroid era, and this was when the Braves were at their peak, like right in the middle of that like 15 consecutive division title run. Chipper
Yeah.
Jones in his prime, Maddox, Glavine, Smoltzy, all those guys. And John Rocker was this like flamboyant, antagonistic fireballer from Georgia, and he hated New York, like specifically the Mets, of course, who were division rivals with the Braves. And he had this phenomenal quote about New York that was just talking about how much of a shithole it was. And he had basically like he did this interview with this Jewish Sports Illustrated reporter, and like he was talking politics, and he's like, I couldn't imagine being a New York Met. I would retire first. Imagine taking the number 7 train to Shea Stadium, sitting next to some queer with AIDS, next to some guy from Beirut, next to some single mother with 4 kids. It's depressing. So then like he became the most hated guy in New York, and the Mets fans would always go nuts on him and boo the shit out of him. But like hilariously, the Braves and Rocker always dominated the Mets, and Rocker never gave up an earned run in the playoffs and was like specifically good against the Mets, and they would always fucking play like in the NLCS in the late 90s. So basically, Rocker just hated New York, and I've been to New York and feel the same way.
Oh, that's cool.
All right, let's move on to Cgauch and Weston, another extremely important matchup, and one where Christian really popped off. And I think when you look at Christian's team, you have, even though he started Taysom Hill, which I think is sort of like a goof. And he has Rogers still. I mean, I love that he
Yeah.
did that and it worked. It's
Yeah.
hilarious to me. But
I was just like, what if this doesn't pan out? It's just kind of like not the week to be doing this when you have Rodgers. You know, this is like
yeah,
something I need to be doing because, you know, I don't. My quarterback has fucking been very underwhelming this year. You know, it's
yeah.
like,
You know what this was, Jackson? This was a flex on me to pick up Taysom when I have Breeze and he got hurt. This is 100%
yeah,
a flex on me. And I love how
yeah.
he still rosters Wentz, who seems to have gotten worse every day since his injury a few years ago. This guy was heralded as a Pro Bowl level top tier quarterback. What do you think about Carson Wentz as a player, Jackson?
Dude, I don't. I see. I don't think this is like a really good year to judge Carson Wentz because like, you know, at the first year he looked bad, but it was like I think he didn't really. Obviously, it was week one; they hadn't even played a game yet. But I didn't think he realized how like hurt and like how bad, you know, his team was. And then as the year has gone on, he's lost more and more receivers. You know, he's gotten like he hasn't had Ertz throughout the year. He hasn't had Goddard throughout the year. There's been weeks that Miles Sanders has been gone, and it's always been at like different times. And then obviously to top all that off, the offense really hasn't, or the offensive line has not been 100% at all year. So I mean, I I don't really think this is a good year to really judge him because he just, I mean, I think he doesn't really. I don't really think a lot of people would be successful. Like my honest thing is like he's honestly he always kind of has them in the game, and he really doesn't have like a whole lot of pieces around him. Like, yes, I know Miles Sanders is a good player, Travis Fulgham has been a pretty good guy for him. But I mean, he doesn't have really any stars on as wide receivers. The tight ends have been down, and the offensive line has not really gave him a whole lot of time to get the ball off. So I don't think this is a good year to judge Carson Wentz, honestly.
Those are some very fair points, but let me counter with this. How is he going to do next year? Everyone's had an off season to heal. Is he going to be a top 10 ranked fantasy quarterback next year?
No, I mean obviously not. I mean, why would you draft Jalen Hurts as early as you did? I think the way that Philadelphia is and how they're going to blame Wentz, and the newspapers and the media is going to blame Wentz enough where it's going to justify starting Hurts.
Right.
And I think they'll probably still have Wentz in like the background, but I think the fact that Wentz is just going to be so booty hurt about losing his spot, and like always thinking about him losing his spot. I feel like he's a guy that doesn't really play with like a lot of like pressure,
Yeah.
and I feel like he kind of understands that Hurts is breathing down his back. I think when he was younger in his career, when he knew he was like the guy, he played with like a lot of confidence and stuff, and I feel like he doesn't really play with the confidence that he used to play with.
That's a great point. I feel like the whole Nick Foles winning a Super Bowl thing really fucked with him mentally. Because half the
Yeah,
motherfucking Philly fans, you know how those people are. Half of those
yeah.
motherfuckers wanted Foles. They wanted to stay with Foles. And then when
Well, I mean,
Foles
do you
left,
remember how good of a year he had that
yeah, he
year?
was he was
And
exceptional until the end when he
he
blew his knee out, right?
Yeah, and he got them to the playoffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he made it easy for Foles to play what like one or two games. I mean, they were a 1 or 2 seed. I know that. And he had some of like the best stats. Like I mean, he had over 30 touchdowns. Like I mean, he would have had a 40 touchdown season if he would have finished the year. And I think he only had like six at the most 6 interceptions. It might have been like less than that, but I mean, he had a phenomenal year, and then it was like everybody's like Nick Foles is the best quarterback in the world. He won us a Super Bowl. He got a Super Bowl to Philly, and like Carson Wentz is over in the background, kind of like, what the fuck
Yeah,
did
he did
I
the
do?
legwork.
Yeah.
That's a great point. All right, so I think we can move on from the Philly quarterback situation and go back to talking about Cgauch and Weston because this was actually an exciting game that had significant impact within the league.
Uh,
What are some other things that jumps out at you about this game? To me, Clyde Edwards-Helaire punching it in twice and getting nearly 20. That trade is sickening in retrospect because it was such an obvious rip-off from my eyes. The Joe
yeah.
Mixon and OBJ for Clyde
Oh, very.
Edwards-Helaire
Oh,
and
yeah. I mean, I mean, that's the only time Christian makes trades. Those when he's trade fucking somebody. So, I mean,
very
that's. I
true.
mean, that's. I mean, that's a given. So, but I mean, it's like he got two players that hadn't really reached their peak yet. I mean, I can't say Edwards hadn't reached his peak yet because there was kind of a scare there when Le'Veon came in, but I mean,
True.
he's kind of the horse for the most part. It's the thing is about Edwards-Helaire is like, what is Andy Reid's game plan that week? Is he just going to be running the ball? Is he going to be passing the ball more? And is Hilaire going to get 10, 10 touches, or is he going to get 25? And that I mean, it's just he's real. Like, he's not necessarily he doesn't have bad weeks per se, but he's just not necessarily consistent to pop off. But he had a week that he did pop off this week.
Very
Josh
true.
Jacobs has been a good player this year. Something that does stick out to me, Waller had a good week. But something that sticks out to me, and it's something that it's going to affect you too. Now, you don't really start Boyd that much. I have Boyd in another one of my leagues, so it's something that I've kind of thought about.
Well, he's really
But
went to
T.
shit
Higgins,
value-wise, Boyd.
T. Higgins, and he's a guy that Christian picked up off the waiver wire. He's been a really good player that Joe Burrow really likes to throw to this year. Well, as fantasy goes, and as I've been there's I was thinking, what wrenches are going to be thrown into the season kind of here late, and Burrow's getting hurt absolutely destroys the Bengals offense. And T. Higgins is not a serviceable, a wide receiver anymore. I don't even know if Tyler Boyd is a serviceable wide receiver anymore. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's like Landry
uh,
in my eyes. Like
yeah,
they're not gonna
I
pass,
mean,
they're not gonna be effective, even though he's the really the best guy. Like he's really not that useful.
and I mean, he has other options. Don't get me wrong, and he'll be able to add people, but. And then I mean, Drake honestly has played better lately than he has. I mean, he doesn't really always get a whole lot of yards, but somehow he always gets a touchdown. And then somehow scores over 10 points every week.
True.
And then his kicker. That's something that a lot of times like I feel like you can really look at is kicker and defense. What happened with the kickers in the defense? Okay, his kicker got him 22 points, or his kicker and defense got him 22 points, and for Weston, his got him one.
Yep.
It's like, and that's I mean, that's not obviously the difference, but that was the difference in the game if you look at the scoreboard.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a
15
13-point
points.
difference. Like it's a
Yeah.
100% the two things that jump out at you. Because Julio Jones getting four, it's like, well, a receiver is going to have a bad week. You're going to start Julio every fucking week. He's healthy. So to
Mhm.
me, I look at the Matt Prater start. I know Weston is a guy who keeps up with the league and is familiar with the schedule. The Detroit Lions were a team on decline, and that's why I picked up the Texans defense this week. They were sort of a laughing stock, and they just recently fired their coach because they were so bad. I just feel like the Prater pickup here was sort of bad. I don't really feel like
Yeah.
there was any reason to do that. The Chiefs against Vegas, like I don't really mind that one as much, but the Prater start, the Lions looked like the Cowboys looked 4 weeks ago when they got shut out touchdown wise 8 quarters in a row. So I just
Yeah.
don't get the Prater start. Is there anything else you want
I
to talk
mean,
about before we move
I,
on?
I mean, not really. I mean, the Prater start the is I feel like he's a trusted kind of kicker, and sometimes I think what Weston was thinking though going into that was, oh, this is going to be a high scoring game. Carolina and Detroit doesn't have a good defenses per se, and this is and I think the Lions had came off a couple of weeks of scoring like a good amount of points. And so I think he kind of thought that they were gonna, the Lions usually don't score 0 points, so I think he just kind of thought it was going to be a back and forth game all the way to the fourth quarter, and that's not what happened.
Fair enough. It's not like it was egregious, but I just didn't really agree with it on a strategic level. Probably because I fucking got screwed because of it. And one thing I want to mention before I move on is that Cgauch, I think, is the scariest team in the league right now. He has a lot of momentum, and he is not the guy you want to face in the playoffs. So.
Well, I mean that's who you're going to face in the playoffs
Yeah,
if
I
you make the
know. It's
playoffs. So
terrible. It's terrible,
unless
Jaxon.
somehow I mean, I don't know who he's playing this week or
It's
like, but I
Lily.
mean, well, if he loses to Lilly and then you can beat him, I mean, if y'all play the last week of the
We
season,
do.
then like, I mean, I guess there is a way that you don't have to deal with him, but you got to beat him in the season.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think that Weston or Lily are going to be able to overtake him, honestly, even if he takes two L's. But yeah, it's hearing you
I think
say.
it's pretty nerve wracking being like where you're at because it's like you're either like you kind of like either you're like I'm gonna make like it's like if you don't make the playoffs, it's kind of like who cares what your record was? Who cares that you were 8-3 at
Yeah.
one point in the year? If you give it up and you end up finishing 8-5,
Yeah, and what are
like
my other two options? Face Cgauch in the first round as the division winner, or face Cgauch in the first round as the wild card. So all three doors sort of lead to fuckery for
yeah,
me.
yeah. Well, maybe the fact that I said that you would play Christian, maybe the fact that y'all play the last week of the season, maybe that's going to be like an elimination game. Depending on what happens. Well, no, because y'all have week 14 too. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think it's
So
it's really going to be more like who gets the division winner money back before one of us gets screwed in the first round and complains about. Hopefully, it's Christian getting not hurt, complaining about formatting again, and not me.
yeah,
But anyway, we can move on to Spencer and Clap for here. And Spencer rolled with Matty Ice in a game where he threw two picks and no touchdowns. That pretty much defines Spencer's week right here, I think.
yeah. I mean, I feel like Spencer kind of has, I mean, me and him have had the top waiver pickups every week, and um, I mean, sometimes the guys I pick up are kind of they are ends up the first guy that I pick is like a miss, or and sometimes he gets a good one. Sometimes he gets a miss. But like I mean, he might have had a good team if Thomas and Adams would have been healthy all year. But the fact that they went down and like we're both out for multiple weeks, and I mean, and then he drafted Moster, hoping Moster was going to be RB1,
That
maybe
team's been a
RB2
disaster all year.
material. Yeah, I mean his team's just been like really hurt all year. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like my team, me and him have the same record, but I feel like as like my team has gotten like better, like certain players have started to play better, and I'm starting to pick up some pretty good guys through the waiver wire. It's like his team kind of is like just kind of falling apart. I kind of feel like.
How do you feel about the assertion that? Oh, let me go back to his team real quick. There we go. Oh, how do you feel about the assertion that Spencer's team would have been great if Adams and Thomas had been healthy all year? Because that's something that you sort of just said, but at the same time, Adams is still ranked number one for receivers. I feel like it's more Thomas who's just had like a disastrous year.
Yeah, I guess the fact that Adams did miss a couple of weeks, like I mean, imagine, I mean, he is wide receiver one, but like I mean, he missed like 2 weeks. I know that's not a lot. Well, honestly, like 3 weeks because he got hurt, in the week 2 game. But I mean, like, and then the fact that he kind of came back slow, or I mean, I guess they got killed against Tampa Bay, but I mean, he's just had some, monster games, and I just imagine if Michael Thomas wouldn't have got hurt, what kind of season could he had, where he drafted Michael Thomas at, he had to draft Michael Thomas in the first round. So,
Yep.
um,
Well, I think it's interesting that Devonte Adams could have had like a Randy Moss tier year maybe if he hadn't gotten hurt those 3 weeks. Because if you look at his
yeah.
other point outputs, it's fucking bonkers.
And I guess something that I mean to talk about now because it's kind of what Spencer's done throughout the years, like but streaming a quarterback, it's something he didn't draft a quarterback early. And see, last year I had changed my name to QB streamer because it had just gotten to a point after Cam got hurt. I was streaming a quarterback every week, and the weeks that I was able to stream a good quarterback, I was able to hang in there and sometimes sometimes win, sometimes lose. But the weeks that I did not pick a good quarterback, I had no shot,
Yep.
and that's kind of like it's kind of like in a way, and I know me and Spencer are similar. It's kind of like a way to say, hey, like I think I'm so good at fantasy, like I'm gonna stream a fucking quarterback every week,
Hell yeah.
and it's like when you kind of fall on your face and you don't it doesn't do good. It's kind of funny to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to deal with it too. So I mean, but
It is a high risk strategy. One interesting thing I want to point out related to that is that both you and Spencer, whenever you got screwed by the strategy, Cam Newton was the backbone of it. Both of
yep,
you got screwed by Cam Newton, so it the
I'll never draft Cam Newton again after like I mean he was serviceable for me like I think a year before that, but like he was dude. I mean he got hurt like halfway through the year. There's no quarterbacks to really choose from,
yeah.
and this year Cam, like, and the thing about it kind of sucked for him. Cam never really played good. For me, it was like Cam. I was like, okay, Cam's going to get into a couple of weeks, and he's going to have a couple good weeks, and he's going to, have a reason for me to keep him around. And for him, Cam started off on fire. Cam had like, I think the first time that me and Spencer played week 2, Cam had like 31, and I'm like, damn, and honestly, if he would have got in on the goal line on the last play of the game, Spencer probably would have won.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that's the thing that's crazy about fantasy football. Like, if you actually pay attention to the games,
Yeah.
not just like the scoreboard, like how close things are. Like sometimes your guy will come in on the goal line to score a touchdown, and then some fucking miraculous way that you won't score, the backup will come in, or they'll give it to the fullback, or they'll do a quarterback sneak.
Second string tight
It's
end, play action
yeah,
throw.
yeah, end around.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It can almost make it even more frustrating, sort of like we were talking about the Monday night frustration earlier.
Yeah,
If you're actively watching the games and it's like, wow, I have big name power running back who's supposed to get the goal line looks, and all those got vultured. It can make it even
Yeah.
worse.
You wanna hear a crazy story? So I'm like now the main difference in this is that one league is a half PPR league and the other one is like a standard, but that there wasn't really that big of a difference. But so I'm and it's the character in the crime is Dalvin Cook. So
Okay.
in one league I'm uh losing by like 14 points. And in another league, in this league, I'm winning by 9 points. I'm playing Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, and I'm telling to myself all day. It's a Monday night game. The Vikings are playing the Bears. I'm telling myself all day. The Dalvin Cook, I'll probably win one of these and lose one of these. Um, Dalvin Cook's probably good for 9 points. I think I'll probably lose in this league, and I'll probably get 14 points out of him in my other league.
Yeah.
Well, what does Dalvin Cook do? Cook gets enough points to beat me in this league, and he gets me 13 points, and I lose by a point in the other league, and
Oh
I
my
and I go
gosh.
0 for 2 for the week.
Brutal.
It's like fantasy football. Honestly, like if you watch it, and watch every game, like I watch every game, and it's like it is brutal sometimes. When your guys are playing in it.
Absolutely. Can you explain to our viewership how you watch football? Because there's some people like me who record individual games. There's some people who use like a Sunday ticket red zone type, and I know that you had like a multi-monitor setup for a while. So how do you actually watch the games this season?
Well, when I moved into I used to watch like, I mean, it's kind of hard to pay attention to four TVs at a time. You get better at it with time, but like you're mainly just paying attention to what's on the big screen, and you're looking at the score of the other games. But this year, I just kind of been watching it in the living room on my TV, and what I'll kind of do is like a Thursday night game, I'll let it record for like maybe halftime or maybe even to the third quarter,
That's the
and
way to
then
do it.
I'll fast forward through the commercials and I'll get it done like a lot faster.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I have YouTube TV, so like it's really easy that way. And then like I got it on my phone too, so it's really easy to kind of like skim through games on your phone. I really kind of honestly like watching games on my phone because that's the fastest way I can watch them.
Yep.
But like on a Sunday, so Thursday night game, it's just one game. That's easy. On a Sunday, what I usually do is I watch Red Zone and kind of keep up with everything that's going on with the day. And after the week, or like then I watch the afternoon games, and the reason I kind of do that is like instead of just like, oh, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch every single game individually whenever it comes onto this website where I can watch it for free. I'd rather kind of like see what games end up being good, and then I'll go back and like I'll rewatch them
Yeah,
like
watch
during
the
the
VOD.
week.
That's smart.
And because I want to watch the good games. I want to analyze, hey, what players are kind of coming in if someone gets hurt, or what receivers are having good chemistry with what quarterbacks. Like, there's a lot of things that you can pick up on by like watching the games and stuff like that. And then obviously the Sunday night games, I'll do it just like the Thursday night game. The Monday night game, I'll do it the same way. So, and a lot of times I'll watch it in the living room or watch it on my phone. Have one game on the TV and then one game on my phone. And sometimes something that I like to do is when I go do cardio, I usually do the stair stepper. So I'll watch a game while I'm doing the stair stepper, and that's kind of something that'll kind of like keep me kind of like not thinking about all this fucking shit like all the stair stepper and how bad it sucks. I can kind of watch a game on there.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I imagine if you watch the Cowboys while you're doing that, nothing could surpass the agony of having to watch the Cowboys offense, no matter what sort of strenuous workout you were doing.
dude, this morning I was watching the Oregon State game.
Yeah.
It got to a point at the end of the game where they had like 4 or 5 reviews. The quarterback got hurt. They were calling timeouts. I'm not even watching a game. Like I
It's
was
like a
like, I'm like,
basketball game.
yeah, I'm like, this is terrible. Like the last 5 minutes of that game literally was me just like tapping on my phone trying to fast forward through all this just just I was just like, if I was watching this game in real time, like how did people do this back in the '90s? Like watch a game in real time.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
horrible. Like I was watching, as many people did, the game live with their captive audience family on Thanksgiving. And holy shit, like the ad barrage in the mid-game ads, like it's getting worse every year. And like I didn't really know
Yeah.
how bad it was because sort of like you, where I like watch VODs or record stuff and just to avoid all the ad spam. But my God, like if you watch games live, it's almost unwatchable in terms of like how hard you get
College is
spammed.
unwatchable because like all the targeting and then like the reviews, and
Yes.
the NFL doesn't have as many reviews, but the NFL has like a lot of like pre-planned like timeouts.
Yeah.
Like
Commercial breaks basically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
to agree with what you said on the college, I was watching the Notre Dame North Carolina game, and a linebacker comes in for a clean hit on a receiver running a crossing pattern who's already caught the ball and taken 2 or 3 steps. Hits him in the chest. Like it's one of those situations where the
yeah, I
receiver,
saw it.
you saw it. Well, the audience might not have. The receiver who's wearing a jersey that doesn't say his name, it says like All Lives Matter or something. He he drops his head to like 3 feet above the ground, and the backer does the same. And because they semi collide, the linebacker gets called for targeting and gets first offense ejected from the like a really big game. It was
Yeah.
awful. And just to completely agree with what you say, even though the NFL is getting worse, college is probably worse in terms of viewing experience. It's absolutely horrible. Every bad thing about the NFL is made worse in college.
What's funny when you say about that, I know you probably deal with this at times, like, sometimes you don't get to start the game at the time, and I don't know, with the way the phones are nowadays and like tickers on certain TVs, like I'll like sometimes like you'll ruin a game because
Yeah, you'll
you see the
spoil it.
score or something
Yeah.
like that. So the other night I hadn't watched the Cowboys Redskins game, and I was, swiping through my phone, and this thing came up, and it was like 41-16, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like I saw like a score when it was like 17-10,
Yeah.
like that. That's like, I'm like, what the hell happened? And then you go back. I immediately got on ESPN and wanted to look at, what happened in the game, like when did it get bad? And I was like, dang, I was like, going into the fourth quarter, like, they had a lot of Cowboys fans holding on by, holding tight with that 20-16 lead,
Yeah.
and
It got
then
real
like
ugly.
it got bad, late. I mean, now obviously that score was kind of deceiving, but I don't know, it's funny whenever you see a score, but then you go back and you watch a game, like a lot of times someone wouldn't even have gone back and watched that. They'd been like, "Oh, the Cowboys got destroyed."
Right.
Little did they know that going into the fourth quarter it was 20-16,
Yeah.
and but
Well, I agree with you. A lot of times you have people that can just look at the final score and not even look into the game properly and dismiss it as a blowout. The disgusting thing about that Cowboy game was even though it was
the end
actually
around on a punt
that
that ruined it. That
that
was
was
the
horrific. They're on their
that's
own
what lost
20.
them the game.
It's fourth and
It's the
10 on their
fucking
own 20 and they do a
it's the
reverse.
like it's the Redskins. Like unless you help the Redskins out, like they're not about to really like do a whole lot.
True. And
Like punt the ball and you're down by 4 points. Like even if they go down and kick a field goal, you're still in the game. And you
agreed.
literally just give them basically at least a free field goal.
Yeah.
So
Everything about that play was so bad. The 20-yard line, the
the
fourth and
momentum
10,
completely shifted.
and like the
You
play,
know,
it wasn't a pass either. Like, how do you expect to get 10 yards out of that? Oh my God, it was so bad and so nonsensical. That was like,
it's like it's Thanksgiving. We're
yeah,
gonna do something crazy
that
that's
was the true.
memorable.
That was like the Sean Payton hard ass like we're gonna hit him with the offsides kick at halftime, but that was actually like a legitimate risk and a surprise. This was just like pure shit for brains. That's like a play
Yeah,
you run on the 50-yard line. You know what I mean? Like you don't
yeah.
run that at your own 20 ever.
Or like just fucking run the fucking offense out there and let Andy Dalton throw it. If you're
Yeah,
gonna do that.
agreed. Well, like watching the Cowboys this year has been immensely disappointing, and I feel like any Cowboys fan who is sort of sitting there like, oh, it's okay. Like Jason Garrett is getting replaced by
Imagine
Mike
not being a
McCarthy.
Cowboy fan and just being like an NFL fan and getting to watch two Cowboys fans just about lose their shit when Dak Prescott's ankles turned sideways. It was a very compelling, fun experience.
The thing about Dak is like I feel like all the dumb football fans think he's god tier and think he's this magical guy because he puts up a bunch of empty passing yards when they're like too far behind to win. Because when I look at Dak, I look at a deeply flawed player with an inaccurate arm. I don't really believe in him at all. And if you consider the weapons he had with that like Pro Bowl, all like pretty much every lineman on that line was like Pro Bowl tier, three good weapons, a solid tight end, the best back in the league, and Dak can barely be above average with that. To me, if you look at guys like Kirk Cousins or Alex Smith, you could put them into that spot and they would do significantly better than Dak did.
I would like honestly agree with you in the past, like every other year before this, because I feel like Dak was so just like he was protected so much because of the offensive line and the run game. But like 2020 has been completely different for the Cowboys. Their offensive line sucks. Zeke has fumbleitis, and it's it's just I mean they're like it's their strengths now is like their wide receivers, and like I do agree with you that Dak did do a lot of damage, uh in times where he the game, they were trailing by a lot of points.
They're playing
Um
prevent defense basically against him.
but there was a couple of times like, me watching all the games and stuff like that when I watched the Cowboys and everybody, all 10 of the guys on the team looked dead, and Dak looked like the only one that believed that he could win the game. And I mean, I think just the evidence of how much worse the Cowboys got when Dak left the lineup. Like I think the Cowboys would be a 5-6, maybe 6-5 team right now if Dak was still playing quarterback. Like I honestly was like kind of like starting to be like, man, I need to stop hating on Dak so much. He's honestly kind of holding his own. Like to think that the tables have been completely turned. You don't have this running game anymore. You don't have an offensive line. If you don't have an offensive line to run the ball, that also means you don't have an offensive line to throw the ball.
Well,
So I don't know.
one
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, you're good. One interesting thing I'd like to point out is that Zach Martin and Tyron Smith, two Pro Bowl tier linemen, were healthy until the game and the game before Dak got hurt. So for the first few games for the Cowboys, Dak was still playing with a very solid line. The line didn't go to shit until the game he got hurt. So it's like, yeah, the Cowboys look pretty good with Dak, like okay, and then look terrible without him. Well, it's like by the time that fucking Red Rocket came in, it was an all backup or all scrub offensive line, and everyone's going to look bad. And then the other thing I want to talk about is Zeke Elliott. Here's a guy who, as soon as he got paid, fucking quit. This is a guy who, as soon as the fucking check cleared, he stopped trying. This is a guy who, if you watch the game, that the Cowboys just were disgusting embarrassments. Zeke gets tackled and he's going down and his like right hand is going down to like stem the blow from the ground, and he's holding the ball in his left hand, and he actually starts to move his left hand out to cushion the blow and like gives the ball up so he doesn't hit the ground as hard. Like Zeke to me runs like a guy who knows that his job is not in any risk. This is a guy who has already been paid. The checks are going to clear from Jerry no matter how much penis he sucks. And he doesn't give a motherfuck. He gave up a long time ago. And when you add that to the line, I think it's awful. Oh, and also Michael Gallup has fucking pan hands, and CeeDee Lamb is only a touch better. I really think that the hands on that receiving core are really bad. I mean, Michael Gallup legitimately has worse hands than many linemen. He's horrible.
Yeah, he has not been a bright spot, this year, in a year that people really thought he was going to like be a guy that you could draft kind of later in fantasy and get kind of like similar production as Cooper, which, Cooper's really been the most consistent wide receiver in that receiving core.
Yeah.
But I've been honestly like I've been impressed with CeeDee Lamb at times. Like I know he dropped that touchdown the other
He
day,
has looked good throughout the year. You're right
but
about
there's
that.
there's been some bright moments. If you just go a week before that, he made that awesome turnaround catch
Hmm.
against whoever they were playing that week. Vikings, I think it was. And, that was like, I mean, I feel like he's just going to be a guy throughout his career, though, that he does really like amazing things, but at the same time, he does like kind of bonehead, kind of like, what the fuck were you thinking, CD type stuff.
Yeah. He's been better than Gallup. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Gallup has been worse than CD. Gallup legitimately has really shitty hands.
I think that, like, last year I feel like there was like certain times that he was like Gallup was similar to like what Lamb's been this year. And there's only been one moment in this season that I've been like, oh my gosh, like Michael Gallup just did something to really help this team win. And it was when he caught a deep ball from Andy Dalton
Yes,
against the
yes. I
Giants.
remember that.
Yeah.
That was the moment that made me fucking get Dalton and like screw up a game because of it. I was like, wow, he completed a deep ball. Be a Cowboys fan watching Dak for 4 seasons? Holy shit! It's like you fucking walked on water or something, dude. Straight to the waiver wire I went like an idiot. But we should probably move on, even though this episode is great. We don't want it to run for 3 hours, so we can talk about your solid win over Austin. You beat him by well over a dozen. You can take the floor with this one and tell me what you were thinking.
I mean, this was one of those I had to win weeks. I mean, I've been
Hmm.
saying that for probably. I mean, at one point I was 1-7, so I've been saying that for probably the last 10 weeks. Like this is a make or break week type thing, and I knew I needed it to like stay alive. Like I know I probably like if the next gen stats would say I have a probably 4% chance to make the playoffs. That hey, that's still a chance. And this kept one of my opponents, at bay with them not being able to get a win, and I got to get another win this week. But it was just, I thought I went into the week feeling like, okay, Christian Kirk versus Murray on Thursday night. That's going to be kind of a hopefully Kirk can steal a touchdown from him, and this was one of the first Thursday nights that I can remember in a while that I didn't just get destroyed by somebody or something, or one of my guys didn't go off. Like, I mean, Kirk didn't have a good game. He had 5 points, but Murray only had 20. So I was really happy with that. His wide receivers or his running backs did all right. My running backs did all right. Bernard didn't really have a good game. Lamar Jackson literally has been like, I mean, I drafted him in the second round and he has been absolute, just very underwhelming. He averages like 19.7 points a week. His biggest point total has been 28. His lowest has been 13. So it's kind of like I've had this kind of like for the first 4 or 5 weeks, I was like, is Lamar Jackson going to finally get things kind of figured out? Like he hasn't really been bad this year, but is he going to get things figured out? And then it was just like he continued to have bad games. And it was like I would look at it and I'd be, well, the lowest point total is 13. He's not getting me the 25 or 30 points that I wish he was getting me every week, like I thought I was going to get. But he's been serviceable, and there's not really anybody on the waiver wire that I feel confident enough to be like, yeah, he's my guy. I missed out on Justin Herbert. I wasn't at that point ready for a quarterback. So that I think Lamar's kind of been my biggest issue. And then uh, obviously I've had injuries with Chris Carson. But back to this thing, Antonio Gibson is a guy I drafted. He's a guy I heard like in training camp was having like a really good training camp, and they had dropped Adrian Peterson, and I feel like a lot of people hadn't really heard about him or didn't know who he was, and he's been just lighting it up lately. Like he's kind of a must start now. He's kind of like my RB2 at this point. And he had 16, and I think he kind of was like the main difference. And then the other thing is like the defense and kicker. He had a total of 6. I had a total of 21. His wide receivers didn't really do a whole lot. My wide receivers didn't do absolute shit. Since I traded Ridley, my wide receivers hadn't been good. Now I did leave Robert Woods on the bench. I kind of have gone to this philosophy of instead of going with like the safe guy, Aguilar 2 had 14. Instead of going with the safe guy, I'll go for these guys that kind of like high risk, high reward. And like, I mean, Jacoby Myers was projected like 9 points, but he ended up getting me 3. There's been weeks where Jacoby Myers has had good weeks, but anybody like if you were like going with the safe route, you would have probably picked Robert Woods over Jacoby Myers. But it was a good win, but I don't know, still not in a very good place. Had a really bad year. Probably the worst year I've ever had in fantasy football by far.
Well, you're still mathematically in it, as you pointed out earlier. And if you reel off three straight, 6-8's not terrible. That's just a losing record by one game. Certainly respectable. And frankly, I fucking just love the storyline that you and Spencer are both mathematically still in it. It would be hilarious if Clap 4 and Austin Black managed to piss away that lead. One thing I wanted to ask you about was Lamar Jackson, because last year he has an MVP season, and this is an MVP season that translates extremely well to fantasy. Lots of rushing yards, and it was clear someone was going to take a very high pick risk on Lamar Jackson. And personally, I was someone who thought he wasn't going to have another MVP tier season. And you spoke about it earlier in terms of, oh, you didn't really feel like you missed out on Hebert, but if you could go back, who would you take in the first round? Would you take Jackson again, or would you go with someone else?
Well, okay. I mean, at the first of the year, when I watched that first video, I honestly was like very like kind of offended because I really didn't think that I had that. Like, I know that Chris Carson. I know Chris Carson's like storyline. I know how you view him. He's injury prone, and he's a guy. If you can kind of maybe he's not up that high on the list of running backs. Maybe he's a guy you can go and get in the third round, and he's going to give you second or maybe first round value. And so when I got to that pick in the first round, and I took Chris Carson because I took Chris Carson in my first round as the 11th pick.
Oh, and then
I was
Lamar in the
at
early second. Okay.
Yeah, and I was at a point where I said, I know Chris Carson, when he plays, he is going to have solid. He's a workhorse type back. I don't know why. Aaron Jones was there. I know there was other good backs, probably like James Conner, Joe Mixon. There was probably other good backs sitting there at that point. And I was really upset too because Josh Jacobs had just gone off the board, and I had a feeling I might be able to get him, and I would have been happy with that at 11.
Well, in a lot of
And
years you would have, because Christian has never really been a running back first type guy, but in this draft, famously, he really focused on running backs.
Yeah. And so I went with Carson, and then second round, I saw that Mahomes went off the board, and I said, okay. And I just had this vision. I don't know what it was. It wasn't a good one, but I had this vision that, I got Chris Carson. He's going to be a good back. Now I'm gonna get me a running. I don't really like any of these running backs. That's why I went after Chris Carson in the first round. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get me a guy that is basically gonna be another running back, and he's my quarterback. I got glimpses of the year before, which, that pick should have been for fucking Kyler Murray. But that's a guy I could have got in the fourth or the fifth round, but. That second round pick that I wasted on Lamar Jackson should have been wasted, or not wasted, but it should have been chose on someone like Kyler Murray, because that's who's had the breakout, awesome year at quarterback. That's, really helped win. If you have him on your team, he's won you certain weeks with his performances.
Right, and he's a guy who is having the really good year, who looks like he's developing very quickly, like Jackson looked last year.
Yeah, and I hit, like, I mean, my first two picks were kind of like weird, kind of not. I'm not really the pick a quarterback got early, but because of what happened last year and how I streamed a quarterback last year, I wanted to have a good quarterback. And Noah Fant was really good week 1, week 2, but he's been injured and just not really good. Like lately, he's been like a mediocre guy, and there hasn't really been a lot of like tight ends to choose from, so I've kind of just stuck with him.
It's real
Gibson's,
dry.
yeah, Gibson's, has been a really good guy that I drafted a little bit later. I picked, I think maybe I feel like I had an unorthodox draft. Like, I was drafting people that I liked and I wanted, instead of just the top guy, the best available, and I hit on a couple of them, obviously Carson was good before he got hurt. And Calvin Ridley I don't think he's our wide receiver 1 anymore, but he was wide receiver 1 for a good part of the season, and he's been a guy that's been really consistent all year. And he's a guy that gave me great trade value to kind of go get another running back, because that's kind of where I was really hurting at.
Sell
And it's
high.
crazy. it's crazy. As soon as I did that, um, I started all these waiver wire guys started falling to me like Bernard and uh there's somebody else that I was starting for a minute. I don't even remember, or I had Gus Edwards for a second, but uh, and then I've kind of switched around kickers throughout the year, but I like Jason Sanders, and I've streamed a defense all year. So, um, but yeah, it hasn't been good. I mean, but uh, Robert Woods is another guy that I picked that's honestly been pretty good. So, and
Top
then I don't
10.
know, I just kind of add people and drop people that are kind of lower on my bench, hoping that they start to like go off. Probably my best ad all year though has been Christian Kirk. I added him, before he started like really going off. Where it was like add Christian Kirk week 7. I think I added him like around like week 5, and then he had a bye like week 6, and then he had a couple. He started having a couple of huge weeks for me, and it kind of gave me an opportunity to be able to get rid of Ridley.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a great trade. I mean, in terms of selling high, you like really nailed the time to get rid of him.
yeah. It was really hard because like I didn't like really nobody was really in a position to be able to trade me a running back because most teams only have like two pretty solid running backs, and Aaron was at a position where his wide receivers were kind of shit. Lamb wasn't doing what he was doing because Dak was out, and he did have some good waiver wire pickups with Claypool and Fulgham. But those guys are so hit or miss. Those guys one week have a great week, the next they score like 1 point. So I feel like it was a trade too that strengthened his team in a position he needed to strengthen, and it helped strengthen mine. He had Connor and Dalvin Cook, so
Yep.
and Singletary could even be a guy you could start if one of those guys went down. So he had uh, it was honestly a perfect trade for both of us.
Yep. Those are the sort of trades that you like to see where both teams have excess in a position and are able to help each other in spots where they're deficient. All right, we should move on to No Fried and Cam. Cam actually put up over 100, and No Fried had an important win to sort of stay in the season. Adam Thielen just decimated the Cowboys defense even in a loss, and that was the real reason No Fried won.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if No Fried had some damn running backs, his team would like be really. I mean, obviously he has Eckler and Eckler's out, but like, and then missed on Fournette. That was but like if he and like I mean he had Dobbins on his bench, so I guess that would have been nice if he would have started him. And Jamal Williams has been a good waiver wire ad, but having Patty and those three wide receivers, Cup, Metcalf, and Thielen. I mean you can start all three of those guys every single week and be fine. Tight end, Gasecki's hit or miss. He doesn't. Uh,
As are the
but yeah,
Dolphins.
but I mean, look at the kickers in the defense. He had 27 between those two. The Steelers defense, but one of the best defenses that you don't have to stream a defense every week type thing. And
Yep, and they were playing hapless
Butker,
Jacksonville too.
and then they had 17. So he won by 10, and the defensive kicker, and that's what basically the difference in the game was. So,
True.
it's almost like something like that. I almost kind of want to take away from the game is kickers and defense. As much as I like it, and as much as like it's fun to pick a kicker and a defense, I really feel like it takes away from like it's more of like a luck thing. It's not, but it is. I mean, I know you can play matchups and stuff like that, but like,
Well, those are the two
I,
most streamable positions in theory, defense and kicker.
say that one more time.
Those are the most streamable positions. Like there's going to be the most defenses and kickers to pick up as opposed to like running backs or receivers where people are going to have those top
Yeah,
guys rostered. Whereas
yeah,
I
you're right.
whereas I went and got like I literally picked up the Texans defense and got 16 points this week. Just as like a stream pick. So
Mhm.
to me, like even though it is very powerful and has a lot of impact on the matchup, like you're saying, I feel like it's one of the more skillful spots because you can't really plug and play as many defenses you could like 15 or 10 years ago. And the kickers are the kickers. Your top tier guys are going to get a lot of points, but there are moments like Harrison Butker. He's probably on the best offense in the league. He only got 5 because they got 5 freaking touchdowns and never had to settle for a field goal. Remember a couple years ago when the Texans kicker, that Fairbairn guy, he was the top in points because the Texans were dog shit in the red zone and he had to kick a shitload of field goals. So
Well, that's like Koo. That's why Koo's so
Yeah,
good because
exactly.
the Falcons are so good at moving the ball, but do they necessarily get into the end zone every time? It's like no,
That's very true. Anything you want to add about this game before we move on? We should probably pick up the pace a tad.
no. I'm good.
All right, cool. And
I'm sure
fun.
Cameron didn't even do his team.
Yeah, exactly. It is sort of depressing to talk about Cameron's team like on a week-to-week basis because like he literally cares so little about it. He gets optimized. Like even his little sister cares more and is better at managing than he is. And shout out to Lily. She's improved every year where Cameron has been stagnant since you broke Alex Lowe's collarbone. Cameron really hasn't improved in fantasy one bit. So that was nearly a fucking
What?
decade ago.
Oh God.
So Rampy here gargles the L. The king of funny beats him. And if you remember, when Aaron appears on the show, he never misses a chance to take a shot at Ben. They like call him someone who doesn't care anymore. A guy has his head in his ass. So this is a big win for Ben because famously Burrow had like 600 pounds slam into his left leg when he was trying to throw a ball.
That was fucking nasty,
It
dude.
was it, it was
That could have
terrible.
been like that could have been like way worse.
Yeah.
That could have been like, and what's crazy is like all year, if you listen to people, they're like, I don't even know if the Bengals should be starting Burrows until they get an offensive line because it is just, it's basically like, hey, here's our first round pick, come fuck him up before he gets good enough to,
Yeah. Get
start really beating y'all because Burrows looks like the real deal.
agreed.
Like I'm gonna be honest with you, if I'm drafting next year. Joe Burrows is my QB. You
Yeah.
know,
Agreed.
like he has looked awesome, and I think he's a guy that you could probably get in maybe the sixth or seventh round. That maybe even later now because of his injury. But if he's healthy to start the year next year, like I mean, I was like, man, I want Joe Burrows and I want Tyler Boyd. Like those are
Yep.
that is the discount double points. That I want next year.
Well, if you remember, I traded for Tyler Boyd for Darrell Henderson with Weston. This was a guy who I really believed in terms of his chemistry with Burrow. Even though sometimes Higgins had a good game or A.J. Green would have a good game, Boyd was clearly the guy he melded best with, and he
Mhm.
really did look good. This was a guy who decimated college football, came right into the NFL to be God tier, and he looked like he was improving every week. And that play where he got hurt, it's a really grisly, awful play where like you don't even need to see the replay. There's like a massive humanity going into like his left leg without like him having any chance to defend himself. It's just terrible. And that was a full ACL and MCL tear, so that's just brutal, absolutely
The thing,
brutal.
the thing about him too is like, and this may change because of the injury, but he's very like he's able to move really well. And anytime in fantasy wise, anytime they were on the goal line, they did a QB sneak. They gave it to him. And then the thing about those little 10-yard runs that he'd take off, on 3rd and 10 and get a bunch of yards. Like I know defenses eventually start to defend stuff like that, but like he would be one of the most valuable fantasy quarterbacks like going into the future. Like
Agreed.
that's just
And they're going to be playing from behind a lot too.
yeah. Have you seen the guy that plays in the secondary for the Bengals? His name's Jesse Bates.
I haven't,
Dude,
no.
Jesse Bates, he's number 30. Dude, he plays some dirty ball. Like every week I see him knocking somebody's head off. Like first week one, he was knocking Mike Williams' head off like twice. He
Typical
knocked
Bengal.
Adam Humphries' head off like a couple weeks ago when they played the Titans. Like he is constant. Like somehow he never gets called for targeting and shit though. Like it's crazy. But like that dude has popped a couple of people this year. He's a really good, and he makes interceptions. He's a really good player.
So he's like the new Von Tez in that respect for the Bengals defense. He has a headhunter, so to speak.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like that Bengals highlight where they basically have like an insurmountable lead versus the Steelers in that playoff game, and they commit two personal fouls on one play to piss the game away. That's like peak Bengals. Nothing is more
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bengals than that comedy of errors from Pac-Man and Vontez. And I love the bit where they're clearly guilty, like AB is literally knocked out on the field, and Vontez comes up to Marvin Lewis, who's like the world's worst babysitter. This is a guy who has watched talented players like screw up again and again and has wasted so much talent not being able to control his guys. And Vontez comes up and like shoulder pads Marvin in the chest to show like I hit him right here, coach. Meanwhile, half of AB's 60 IQ is like bleeding out onto the field. Oh my God, Vontez. They're literally. I mean, you know you're bad when like you dirty hit someone and like you're gone for the rest of the year. You're that much of a piece of shit. Like you
Yeah.
really have to be bad to be in that position. But anything you want to say about Aaron and Benny Boy before we move on to the previews?
I mean, it was a pretty close game. Look at what Ben did on the kicker and on the defense.
Yep.
Fucking 34 points.
Rodrigo with the
And
goggles with that
it's
narrow
kind of
rim.
like honestly, Aaron's team played better. But because of but I'm not gonna say Ben's team wasn't consistently good. He has a lot of people that has 10 points now. Burrows got hurt, so maybe he would have had more. But
Nick
you
Chubb
know,
coming back
sometimes
for him is huge, dude.
Chubb's being healthy at the right time, where you kind of like were able to stay above water till you got him back, and then also like Chase Edmonds somehow has been a serviceable guy, even though he's like the number 2 running back in that offense.
He's still getting touchdowns even though Drake is hurt, man. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to the all-important Week 12, a season-defining week in many ways. And I think we have to start with Gauch and I because it's probably the most important, or Gauch and Lily, because it's really going to have a lot of impact on the league. Because Lily can sort of be buried with a loss here in many ways, but
I love Christian because he always like speaks and then other shit happens. Like if you look at like he was like, oh my gosh, that
Will Fuller,
Fuller's touchdown got called back. And it's like the fantasy gods are like, "Are you like you're a fucking idiot, dude? Like, watch
you got a
this." And
no-no
like,
going into the ninth,
yeah,
bro.
then he gets two of them later, and
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna be honest with you, Christian might have used to watch the games, but I think he plays a lot of fucking games on the internet, and I don't even think he really watches the games. And he's the type. This is
The
how I
new
imagine
man.
Christian and fantasy football. He's like playing and stuff, and he's like, okay, I got to break in between games, and he comes and he switches pages, and he looks at what the score is, and he's like, yes, I got 17 points, or yes, like, and then like. So imagine the Will Fuller moment. He sees that
He
that,
alt
that got
tabs
called
back
back or
in.
whatever.
What the fuck? 2 touchdowns in a minute. Look, I was watching
Yeah.
the game. I was like listening to some retarded in-law prattle on. I'm like, thank God I found the football game. CVS was hidden for some reason, and it's Will Fuller like going against literally no coverage. And I'm like, I hope Lily started him, and thank God she did. Almost 30, which is just massive, of course, for one guy to account for 30 before the real games even start. But Cgauch
Yeah.
did have Amari Cooper managed to queef out 8.
17.
Yeah, I mean, like, holy shit. It's so vexing to me that the Cowboys were that awful after they looked decent against Minnesota. And where did most of the difference come? Zeke motherfucking Elliott. The one
Yeah.
Cowboy that fucking Cgauch has is the guy that went off while Zeke took a dump in my mouth after his best fucking game of the season.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that I don't know what's going to happen with this, obviously, but I mean, if you look at her bench, Adrian Peterson already played, and she doesn't have another running back, and Todd Gurley's not going to be playing.
True.
Naheem Hines is a big time kind of hit or miss. Like he either has a really big game or he kind of does mediocre. I think last time he played Tennessee, he had a good game. Yeah, he had 23 last time he played Tennessee. So I think Tennessee might be keying on him, but he might have a serviceable game for her. But she's going to have to add somebody. And I mean, but her wide receivers are really good. Obviously, the 30 points from Fuller is going to help her out with that running back kind of thing. I just, what's the likelihood Lily checks her team again and realizes that Todd Gurley's not playing before 12 o'clock tomorrow?
Well, the answer to that is it makes me feel like a black hole inside because I need Lily to at least be live, at least start a fucking lineup. And
Yeah.
this is like part of why I think the buy-in should be raised. In situations like this, like a you or a me or a Spencer, and like you and Spencer have both had off years, and both of you have been incredibly active all year. Neither one of you has quit or stopped playing waiver wires. Each one of you has tried extremely hard, and it's why you were both still mathematically in. And to me, it's very vexing to see to look at this and be like, Lily is
Well, I just imagine if I was 7-4, you know what
yeah,
I mean?
we're
Like
right
how hard
there.
I would be trying,
Yep.
you know?
I agree. That's what I'm saying is like I see this situation and I'm like if this was Jaxon or Spencer and me it would be like I wouldn't have any worry, but then it's like it's
Yeah.
Lily so I'm actually kind of worried. So what else do you think going into this game other than Gurley? What are you sort of looking for? What are you predicting?
Um, I mean, if Christian plans on starting T Higgins, I don't see T Higgins doing a whole lot with no Burrows. So
Agreed. Even
that's
against the
not.
Giants.
Yeah, that might be like 2 points or something. You know, that might even out with the fact that Gurley's not playing. As much as I like, Rodgers, and I like how Rodgers has played this year, going against the Bears is a tough matchup, and I think Russell Wilson, uh, definitely takes that edge, and I think he probably has a pretty good game. Obviously, Edwards-Helaire and Jacobs. I think those guys are going to probably have really big games. Jacobs for sure. Edwards-Helaire will probably have a touchdown and maybe 100 yards. Waller will probably have a good game. Atlanta is really bad
Yeah.
against tight ends. Drake will probably have a serviceable game. Koo in the defense will do good. Koo will have at least 10. So I don't know. I just think it really depends on who Lily plugs in there at that RB2 and what they do. Uh, for her this week, can she find somebody on the waiver wire that can get her some points? And for Christian, I mean, uh, I might if I was him, I might start Reynolds over Higgins. Or I don't know if Debo Sanders is like available. You might add someone, but uh, I think Christian definitely. I mean, even though he's losing by 12 points, I think he has the edge.
Yeah,
Um,
especially because he's only had one guy play, and that one guy disgustingly overperformed. Would you
yeah.
roll with Hill, Taysom Hill, if you were Cgauch here, Jackson? Since
I
it's
when I was scrolling down his team and I saw Taysom, I was like, I kind of might want to start Taysom.
it's
Like
at Denver.
if it was like 12 o'clock, if it was like 11 o'clock tomorrow, and I saw that Lily still hadn't put anybody in for Gurley, I would do it just to kind of like kind of throw a little wrench in the day. But I think Rodgers is going to have a better game than Hill. And I think another thing that you kind of have to think about is is Russell Wilson going to have 35 points or is he going to have 20? I think that's going to be uh a big deal in this too. I think he plays a huge role in Lily's team's success.
I agree. To me, this is Russell Wilson, a guy who, sure, he's extremely highly paid and has his accolades, but I sort of think he's a little underrated in terms of like the fantasy numbers he puts up yearly and not
Yeah.
really ever getting hurt. He's really, really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like you would think he'd be like. I mean, I think at the first of the career it was because the defense. It was it's defense. It's a defense. And like he's kind of put all those stigmas down. And he's shown that he can carry the load.
True. Very true. So would you like to pick a winner here?
Yeah, I think Christian's gonna win.
Yeah, I unfortunately agree with you. I got Cgauch by 5, 115 to 110. We can move on in division to me versus Weston, an equally important but equally sort of sickening matchup because this one looks a little ugly already. Zeke Elliott has less than 2, but Logan Thomas and the Texans defense both did really well for me. I want to hear what you think about this before I give my thoughts.
Um, I think you're starting your best lineup. So I don't really think there's anything you can do to improve it. I think Ronald Jones is destined to have a better week than he had last week, so I'm glad that you're sticking with him. Hunt, I think, has a good game against a bad Jacksonville defense. Roethlisberger is one of those guys, I don't know. He might have 30, he might have 15. And that's how a lot of the quarterbacks are. But, I mean, I think that's kind of like a key X factor in your team. on what he does. And then obviously Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, two of the best wide receivers. Hopkins is just kind of not consistent. You know, one week he'll have 20, one week he'll have 5. Keenan Allen's been very consistent throughout the year. You know, you're getting 15 from him. And I think the fact that the big thing here is Keenan Allen will counter if Herbert has a good game. So, you know, if Herbert has a good game, Keenan Allen has a good game. So, I mean, you're not really if Herbert, you're not getting killed there. Um, as you know, as bad as Zeke Zeke had a bad game. I think at this point in the year, you've gotten used to not, you know, the underperforming Zeke, and
True
to know
that.
that, you know, to know that, you know, Weston started McKissick this week and got 2 points out of him. I think you can kind of feel a little bit better about that. The fact that Logan Thomas did score that touchdown, a guy that's a hit or miss type guy. Now Kelsey might still score more than him, but you know Prater didn't do anything great, only, you know, 5 points. And then your defense got you 16 points. You know, like that one. You know, I know how that is. That one feels good. You know, when you hit on a defense that you think is gonna perform against another team, and um, obviously, you know, Derrick Henry, he's a good player and he'll have a good week. I don't think he'll be able to match Ronald Jones and Hunt. Mike Davis, I think Mike Davis could have a pretty good week. The guy that's sitting in his flex. Um, so maybe he kind of might have a little bit of an edge in the running back department, maybe a little bit of an edge at the quarterback position, but you have the counter of Allen, which I really like. I think Suckup will definitely get more than 5 in a high scoring game against Kansas City. I think
Yep.
he's good for 10 at least. You know, he's had, I think, 17 or 18 in 1 week this year. Um, and I think obviously Kelsey has a good week. I'm not a real big fan of Allen Robinson, even though he's had good, you know, he's been a pretty consistent guy this year. And you know, Julio
Foles is
Jones is
hurt.
really inconsistent. I think you have the edge there. Just in your guys are way more consistent than his. So I mean, uh, I think it really depends on, you know, does his defense, what does his defense do? Like on Monday night, you know, you are sitting there, maybe the game's 110 to, you know, 95 or
Yep.
maybe 100. You know, what does his defense do? Do the Eagles just completely shit the bed and the Seahawks get, you know, 24 points or something, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
and
Wentz
or
leads
is
the
are they
leagues in
going to get
interception.
5?
Wentz leads the league
Yeah.
in interceptions thrown, so he could
Yeah.
definitely pop off here with his defense. That's a great point. I feel like the Mike Davis point too is another great one because it was definitely sort of assumed C-Mac would be back after that first injury, and he's banged up his shoulder now. So Weston is sort of sitting here with Mike Davis, like able to get top tier production out of him unexpectedly weeks later.
I know Weston's really kicking himself right now too, because, you know, starting McKissick, you know, he had a couple other guys on his bench that he could have started in that place. You know, Henderson, who's kind of been underwhelming lately. You know, he had a couple of really good weeks, but he's been very underwhelming lately. Um,
Good
and
matchup, yeah.
then Carlos, you know, Carlos Hyde, you know, had like 13 last week, or, you know, 15 last week, and uh, I mean, we don't even know if Chris Carson's going to play or not. So, you know, I bet he's kind of kicking himself, wishing he could have might maybe put someone else in that position, or even like put Mike Davis where McKissick is, so he could put Deontay Johnson at, you know, the wide receiver, um, or the flex. I mean, so I don't know. I feel like he's gonna have, like, after this week, if you do Twiff next week, he's gonna have a lot of points like left on his bench.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love how you pointed out that he's locked in at running back too, so that's a bit interesting. So who do you think is going to win this?
Definitely, I think you are.
I give it to myself as well, although Hopkins, as you pointed out, has been a little hit or miss for my liking, and with Nick
I mean, I feel like he's the same as Julio, but like he's a little bit of like a higher tier than Julio. You know,
you know,
he'll have a, you know,
less banged up too, which is a big deal.
yeah.
I'm a little bit scared Kareem Hunt has a very high possibility of putting up these terrible weeks with Chubb back, because he
But he
was.
always gets the ball on the goal line. So,
That's true.
you
That
know,
that
and
is
I
a
mean, at
he's
the
a
end
lot
of the
like Chris
day,
Carson
like,
in that
when
regard.
you have gotten like value that you didn't ever think you were going to get out of Hunt. You know, Hunt's a guy you probably. I don't even think Hunt went until like round 7 or 6 or something like that. You know, he's a guy you got late. It was on your bench probably week 1, week 2. You know, and he's a guy that if he stopped playing today, he would have probably exceeded his point total that he was supposed to get on the year a couple weeks ago.
It's a
You
great
know,
point. Yeah. certainly. But with Zeke Elliott also sort of going downhill and the Cowboys offense looking jokish and Ronald Jones being inconsistent, I do have a lot of sort of question marks in running back, even though I do have three solid ones in some regard, you would think. But
Yeah,
they all are very flawed players.
yeah. I mean, Zeke's been very, very, bad like lately. Yeah, he had a good week against Minnesota, but he hasn't. I mean, before that, he had so many bad weeks in a row. Do you ever wonder if maybe he's dealing with some type of like injury or something like that that he's trying to play through?
I think about that, but I honestly think it has more to do with the fact that he's gotten paid and that he's not really in a position where he wants to like try hard at 100%. And I think if he was banged up and Dak's banged up and the line's banged up, he would just be like, put
Yeah,
me on
like
injured
why don't we
reserve.
get him out of the lineup?
Yeah, I do not really think he's playing with an injury. I just think he's sort of like gotten paid and doesn't give a shit. The fumbles are particularly bothersome. Like that's what
Yeah.
when I watch the
That's something that
Cowboys,
he
that's what
never
pisses
really
me
had
off.
issues with. I feel like in his first couple of years, that's why it's like I feel like so surprising.
Agreed. And the way that he fumbles is what makes me the most angry. He doesn't really have a lot of hits where like a guy randomly hits him from the
Punches it
side,
out.
yeah, or the ball squirts out. It's like I'm falling down and like I'm gonna like protect myself with my the ball hand and like fuck the ball. Like, you can't do that as a running back. I don't care how much you're getting paid. You can't do that. So
Yeah.
we can move on. We both think I'm gonna win in a must-win game, and this is a
That's kind of put y'all in a position where like they can't really even catch y'all, or Lily has to win 2 weeks in a row, just to even be tied with one of y'all. So, you know,
yeah. Lily does hold a tiebreaker against me, which is sort of irritating. So between AB and Clap 4, these are two teams that they're at the top of that division, and this is just going to be a huge match. And unfortunately for Austin, Clap 4 has already basically punched in like two peak performances here.
yeah, 47, going into the week, you're not feeling good. The 8 that you got from Hawkinson, you're happy with that. That's serviceable. Um, but, you know, I mean, I mean, I'm so mad that I didn't pick up James Robinson like one of those first weeks in the year when I still could have, or like, I mean, before the season started. But like, I mean, if he didn't have James Robinson, like, what would his team look like? Now, I know he probably wouldn't have been able to give away Edwards Hilaire. And I mean, I know he would have Mixon, but this is a team that I think if they stumbled into the playoffs, that this would be a for sure they would get absolutely destroyed. They've seen better days is the way I look at this team. I think, the Giants defense and Lutz, I think that's good. I like Lutz because he plays in a dome a lot of time. You don't have to deal with the wind.
Yep. High powered
But
offense.
I like when they play in Denver because, the elevation and all that, they can kick deeper field goals. So I mean I like that. I like Giants, going against a terrible quarterback with Burrows out. Um, we'll see what juju we get this week, whether the one that we saw week one or the one we saw most of the year. Tyreek Hill's going to get his TD and his yardage. AB, I don't like starting AB. He sent me a trade for Antonio Brown for Giovanni Bernard, and it's honestly one I kind of want to just accept because at this point Giovanni Bernard's not even going to do anything anymore with Burrows out of the lineup.
Yeah.
Their offensive line is so bad, and but I really don't even like AB. It's like he's really just I mean he's been mediocre. At
There's
best. Now I
yeah.
know he's still trying to get into the end zone, but and if he got into the end zone, it would be a good week. But and I know he just started playing, and he is getting good targets, but he's just not a guy that I really would even bite on. I think what's really kept this guy's team above water is Kyler Murray. He's been probably the best fantasy player all year. As far as quarterbacks, obviously Dalvin Cook's been a better wide receiver or a better running back fantasy wise. But James Robinson's been a really, really good back all year. He's been very consistent. His lowest point total was a 5 week game.
Probably the
Um,
biggest surprise of the year from my perspective.
yeah, very. He's by far.
I mean, here's a running back who puts up top tier numbers on a team that never fucking plays from ahead. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. He really does. And I don't really think he can really produce himself a better lineup than what he's got in there. So, and it's just maybe going into the week, if I would have said, oh, Watson's only going to probably get like 20, and Duke Johnson will probably get 5, like that's probably what I would have projected for them. But now that I know, Watson's got 33 and Johnson's got 14. And then Gallman, he'll have a serviceable game. Lockett, Godwin, those are good wide receivers. Ebron, this is going to be a serviceable team. Unless someone just really goes off, if Kyler Murray really goes off, I don't really think he has that great of a chance to win.
I agree. I think AB has a lot to overcome, and your point about if the Texans game was on Sunday was dead on. Like, I don't think anyone would have predicted both of these guys to pop off like they did. So I give the edge to
Yeah.
Clap for, and I think that that'll be a devastating loss for AB. All right, we can move on to you versus Spencer in a game it looks like you're pretty much sealed up to win. You can just take it away.
Okay, I mean, obviously, it's kind of like the last one we talked about. Maybe going into if these games were on Sunday, you wouldn't be as you're not going to think Antonio Gibson's going to be the Cowboy killer and get 31 points, or that the defense is going to get a pick with like and trash can time and get 15 points over it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and I mean, go if like. I was thinking about it. I have multiple weeks where I'm like, okay, what's this Antonio Gibson guy going to do this week? Or, oh, what's this player I'm playing going to do this week? And it's like, oh, okay, he got a touchdown and he has like 40 yards rushing at halftime and 20 receiving yards. Okay, he's got like 12 points. That's about what he was like projected. The third quarter goes by, he doesn't do anything else, and you're like, okay, like things are looking pretty good. He might get a couple more yards, maybe 50 more yards, and he might get or maybe another touchdown. He's probably going to get around 20 points, about what his ceiling would be.
Yep.
And then boom, the fourth quarter starts. He gets 2 more touchdowns. Adds another 50 receiving yards or rushing yards, and then the defense gets a pick six right at the end of the game. Like I mean, I would have sucked to have been watching that in real time. But yeah, I mean, it's probably, and then like the fact that he started Schultz and Schultz got 2 points. Cooks did good, 8 points, but he needed Cooks to be like Will Fuller and get 29 or whatever Fuller had.
Yep.
I'm not really scared of Matt Ryan. I hope Matt Ryan has a good week after having a bad week last week. Fucking Lamar Jackson, just to continue his fucking roller coaster of a season, has COVID, which I'm really not mad that I'm having to not start him, because he like hasn't done shit all year. And I saw that they said Fitzpatrick's gonna start, so I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna start him."
Against the Jets.
And yeah, and Aaron Jones. I feel like Aaron Jones is like starting to get back on track. He's had more points every week after he missed those games. So if I am able to make any noise the next couple weeks, I think a big key component to it is Aaron Jones and Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson's at this point, like, he's 11. He'll probably be a top 10 back next week. But this guy's been crazy. He's great value where I drafted him, and he's had weeks of 18, 16, and 31 over the last 3 weeks. Now he's been playing a lot of bad teams, but he's been a nice key on my team. I don't really know. I always change my wide receivers around. I'm feeling like starting Aguilar just because Atlanta's so bad. And Kirk really hasn't done that much over the last 2 weeks. But, every time, you bench a guy like that, he finally, gets the 20 points that he was getting beforehand. So I'm kind of hesitant. And then, Woods had a good week last week, so I'm kind of hesitant to start him again this week. But he's kind of a hit or miss guy. He'll have really big weeks and then like really bad weeks. I'm starting Ingram. Because I'm tired of Fant, and I picked up Ertz a couple weeks ago, but Ertz is still on the IR. Something that I did earlier today, I saw Gurley was out of the game, so I added Brian Hill. And Brian Hill's like he's looked really good in his times where he's actually got to play. But there's been but because they usually ride Gurley and then ride Gurley on the goal line, he's not a guy that you've been able to add. But I mean, I guarantee, in daily fantasy type things and anything like that, Brian Hill is going to have a huge week. The Raiders have a terrible run defense, and I got Sanders versus one of the worst teams, and then The defense already win. I mean, I think I'm just going to win. And obviously, like I said kind of earlier, Adams, Thomas, good players for Spencer's team. Hopefully, Sanders has a good game. Hopefully, Mostert has a good game. But I just think that I'm too far ahead at this point, and I have a lot of good players remaining that it's just going to be really hard for him to catch up to me.
I agree, especially the point you made about watching the Cowboys game, because it's already miserable enough to have to watch the Cowboys get embarrassed on Thanksgiving. But you went from being, solid ahead, good performances, and then the garbage time at the end happens where the Cowboys really get laughed out of the game, and it benefits you. Like, you basically had the two players that benefited most from that. So, brutal fourth quarter on Thanksgiving. And if we just look at the Thanksgiving games, you have like Detroit getting embarrassed as usual, the Cowboys getting embarrassed, and then the one good game that would have salvaged the night got moved. So, one of the worst Thanksgivings as far as football goes in recent memory.
It was very bad. Two blowouts, two teams. Like, I mean, I will say that was probably the most, like, with the most on the line between 2, 3, and 7 teams. You know what I mean? Like, there's never been more on the line than that game. Than that game or whatever. But it's like those games sucked that day. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and I swear, don't they usually have college football on Thanksgiving, or is that like
it's usually the
they've
day
always
after. Usually Friday
okay?
is the big college football day.
And like, I mean, there was a couple of good games yesterday, like the North Carolina game and the
Yeah.
Texas Iowa State game was good. And I don't know. I mean, if you stayed up for the Oregon State game, Oregon lost at the end.
Well, famously, they used to have UT and A&M on Thanksgiving, which was like the best college football rivalry ever.
Yeah, and now they don't even play, which is
Terrible. Longhorn
crazy.
Network. Longhorn Network and SEC, both of them get to jerk off about being fucking above average in their own conference. What a joke.
A&M actually looks really good this year. That
They
that
do.
number 2 running back, like Anais Smith or something like that. I like that kid a lot. Like, he's going to be a fantasy fucking player here in a couple of years. I'll tell you that.
So I also think that you're going to beat Spencer and we can move on. And here's a classic matchup between two old friends, Benny and Cameron. Cameron's just completely hapless and having another collapse as he does every year. And Ben looks pretty good. He's already punched in 10. I don't think too much time needs to be wasted on this. We can
What
edge Benny
pisses me
Boy
off
here.
about Cameron is like he has like I mean, if I'm glad he didn't have Swift in his lineup this week because Swift hasn't been good, but it's like Swift's been on his bench like the last 5 like a lot of these weeks, and he's had like 24-point games, 20-point games. He's had good weeks,
Janu Smith,
and
too. He's like been benching Janu Smith for no reason. Ranked
yeah,
5th
and,
tight end.
I was about to say that about him. It's like Higbee's either been hurt or questionable most of the year, and he's had one good week all year. And John Smith is good for at least one time. Like, I see John Smith score a touchdown every single week. So I don't know. He just kind of frustrates me, and I kind of have to just like chalk it up or whatever. But Kamara, I think Kamara was really carrying him a lot throughout the year and has been. I mean,
Yeah.
he's solid for 10 every week. Melvin Gordon has certain weeks where he has good weeks, and those weeks, probably help him a little bit more. Tannehill's been a good quarterback. Tannehill hasn't been bad. So, AJ Brown been a good player as well. If he wasn't hurt or whatever, he's had a couple of good weeks where he's just really popped off.
Oh, yeah.
For Ben, Josh Allen being the quarterback, I feel like he's really cooled off, from that hot start that he had. But he's kind of I feel like we hadn't really heard about him as much lately. He had a really good game against the Seahawks, had a good game against Arizona, but they lost and they had a bye week, so we hadn't really heard about Josh Allen lately. But this is one of my favorite guys to watch all year. Just Josh Allen, just the growth from from last year to this year, and I'm really curious to see how he holds up in the playoffs this year. He got a little bit of experience last year, and we'll see what he does in the playoffs. But I like Josh Allen as the quarterback. Chubb playing against a bad team. I like that. Edmonds is a serviceable RB2. Evans, I don't like Evans. He's a big name guy, and he has certain good weeks, but he's only ranked number 17, and he's a guy you probably had to draft early. I mean, way earlier than that
Yeah.
to get. McLaurin's been awesome all year. He's been a really good player. Had minimal bad weeks. Pops off for 15 to 17 from times. Hunter Henry's been all right. I feel like Ben's team is one of those that's like it's nothing to really just like write home about. Gus Edwards, I think, is good, but if these guys do serviceable, then his team kind of together can be good. So I definitely think obviously Ben's gonna win because he's playing a guy who hasn't really touched his team a whole lot lately and isn't even starting the best guys that he could. I think Ben should start Cole Beasley over Mike Evans. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I like Cole Beasley. John Brown's out this week. Josh Allen to Cole Beasley discount double points. That's something that I would like. But other than that, I don't really see. Obviously Cameron should put Jonnu Smith in, but I probably wouldn't start Broncos defense. I'd probably stream a different defense than that. But I mean, when was the last time he ever streamed anything? So yeah, Ben for sure.
Last time he streamed something was Pornhub. Let's
For real.
yeah, let's I mean, I look at the Browns defense here set to have a huge week against Jacksonville. Same goes for Nick Chubb. Even though Josh Allen did have those 4 bad weeks, at the end of that streak he came out and said like, "It's me. I'm going to get my shit together." And I think he
Yeah.
has. And I've just got to agree with you and go with the king of funny here. If he can win this game, it will make his division much harder for his opposition to grasp because he's 6-5, everyone else is 5-6. So huge, huge game for Benny Boy here. Only projected to win by 2 by the computer, but I got him winning by 7. So we
I
can
think he'll win by more than that. Yeah.
okay.
We can move on.
Yeah, we got Aaron and No Fried here, 5-6. Basically, if either of these teams want to stay in it, they've got to win. Connor's out on COVID. Mahomes is playing Tampa, and what's going to be a great matchup. What do you think about this one?
I think it depends a lot on um I think it depends a lot on Mahomes and what Mahomes does against Tampa Bay. I think Metcalf has a good game. I think Cup has a good game. I think that's huge that Thielen has COVID. I think it's huge that Connor has COVID, but it's kind of like you lose one, he loses one, which is kind of cool. But honestly, I would probably say that they're pretty even at wide receivers. Maybe you could give a slight edge to No Fried, but now that we know that Lamb only got 2 points and shit the bed, I think we can kind of say that he's going to win that battle between the wide receivers, and Ridley's going to have a really huge week. Claypool's going to have a good game for him to really compete with those couple of guys that he's starting. Um, when you go down his team, obviously because he traded Jones, it's Matson or Singletary. So he's probably going to have to start Singletary unless he can find somebody in the waiver wire. So that makes his running backs significantly worse. But I think Cook will probably have more points than Jamal Williams and Devin Booker combined. So I don't think he really has a whole lot to worry about there. I think at tight ends they break about even. I would have gave the edge to the Dolphins if I didn't know that Lamar Jackson was not going to be playing, but I think both these defenses are going to probably be really good. I think both these kickers are good kickers. This is going to be a really tough matchup. Um, I think the X factor for Aaron, Cook's going to go off. Hopefully Ridley has a good game. I think the X factor for him is what does Newton do? And I guess I don't like to I like to critique people's teams, but I don't like to tell people what to do. So I hadn't really ever said anything to Aaron, but something that I've been wondering about Aaron over the last couple of weeks is why he's confidently starting Cam Newton. And I know Cam Newton's had some serviceable weeks over the last 4 weeks, but he's just a guy that scares me so much. And maybe it's because of what he's done to me in the past, but he's a guy that I just think you need a big game. You're in a big game, he's gonna fuck you. And I don't know, maybe this is the week that he fucks Aaron, but I think that's the X factor for him. And then I think the X factor for No Fried is obviously Pat Mahomes having a huge game, DK Metcalf having a big game on Monday night and ruining everything, or these running backs that are basically backups. Uh, they perform and maybe sneak in for a touchdown or at least get 7 points. Uh, he's gonna really have to have them do something.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think the Dolphins pick up versus the Jets is great. The Jets are just completely hapless. And they're actually in a position where they're looking at Darnold, the guy that they thought was going to be the end all be all, and being like, you're fucking terrible. Which is just so typical New York. Like, they were on all fours for this guy without the fucking knee pads, and now with Adam Gase, he's had about 20 bad games, and they're ready to run him out of town. I mean, I would give him the chance to at least go with a new coach. But I pretty much agree with the majority of what you said, and I think that this matchup is sort of like CD Lamb is like the elephant in the room with the droopy 2 points, with Aaron unable to have Connor, and I'm agreeing with you. Even though Newton was good recently, I think he's sort of a ticking time bomb, and I would just really favor no fried here.
I think the thing you have to come down to though is Pat Mahomes going to score more points or is Dalvin Cook going to score more points?
Yep.
And I think for me, I give the edge to Aaron because I think Dalvin Cook they get more points. You know,
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
that's that's kind of where I'm at with that.
you think Eckler could move into the starting rotation here for no fried? Any chance of that?
Mm, I mean, but I didn't even look. Has he talked about coming back
Yeah,
soon?
he's activated off IR.
Wow.
Is
Well,
isn't hasn't exactly been adamant Eckler would play if he was activated. So I mean, who knows? But it is an option. He doesn't even have an
yeah.
injury designation, so he could.
I don't know. That's just one of those that's like, it's kind of easier to talk about from the outside looking in, but like if you were really in that position and you knew, hey, I need to make sure the guy that I'm putting in plays. Now,
Yeah,
obviously, he's got Devontae Booker and Jamal Williams. Like maybe if he had a little bit of like some more serviceable guys, this wouldn't be something that he even considered. But you have to really kind of be like, if he doesn't play, like I'm pretty screwed. You know what I mean? You can't. It's really hard to risk things like that. And even if he does play, what's he going to get you?
that's true. It is a big risk. But you'd think that Aaron is gonna win.
Yeah, I think Aaron's going to win. I feel like Aaron's team, you know, when he made that trade, for Ridley, that strengthened that department of his team. And I just think, he's continued to try all year, even though his team hasn't been that good. Um, and uh, you know, I feel like there's certain teams that have, kind of gotten worse throughout the year, and part of it is by certain trades that they've made. And I think there's teams that because they haven't made a trade at all, their team has stayed completely stagnant. And there's a couple teams that I feel like have made trades that were beneficial to their team, and it's kind of made them kind of get on the right track and stuff like that. And Aaron's one of those teams that I feel like he's been stronger towards the latter part of the year than he was, early in the year. No, just that. I mean, I feel like there could be a lot can change in these last 2 weeks. And I feel like I think obviously after this week you'll have a little bit more clarity, and then next week we'll have more clarity. But I think there's going to be multiple things that are still decided in the last week of the season.
One thing that I think isn't I fucking had my mic muted. One thing that I think is interesting is that in this last season we have had uh, teams with a lot of close records in their division. So if you look at the first division, You have me and Cgauch very close, but all the other teams are live. And even the second division, the 2, 3, and 8 teams are live. And in the Big Oven, everyone is live. 12 out of 12 teams going into Week 12. That's very rare, so we'll close with that.